welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Now, at about 7:14 a.m. on the 8th of October 2023, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, alerted Nigerians to expect flood in 9 states as Cameroon began the release of water from its Lagdo Dam. These states are Adamawa, Taraba, Benue, Nasarawa, Kogi, Anambra, Edo, Delta, and Bayelsa. Now, since then, critical agencies have been meeting to find a way out of this impending danger. And tonight, on NTA Tuesday Live, we shall examine challenges and prospects of mitigating the flood problem. But before we go into the conversation proper, let's get to see this report put together by correspondent Ilyasu Ali Yakubu.
Flooding in Nigeria has become an annual occurrence which has continued to claim lives and property, as well as displacement of human settlements and livelihoods. This scenario prompted intervening agencies and development partners to strengthen collaboration for better ways and strategies of mitigating the effects of the menace. In the past, provision of relief materials to the flood victims has been top priority of intervening agencies, not considering mitigation strategies which were viewed as being reactive rather than proactive approach. However, the introduction of the disaster risk reduction mechanisms by the United Nations General Assembly in 1989 to focus more on proactive approach, which seems to be gradually changing the narrative. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, has since adopted this strategy, with state government establishing the local organizing committee for disaster. DG NEMA says it is result-oriented as the 2023 flood intervention is now recording great success.
Coordination is a vital component of disaster management which needs to be given adequate attention. In line with NEMA's mandate of coordinating emergency preparedness, mitigation, and response activities across the country, the agency has deemed it fit to resuscitate the ECF. This is to foster partnership, collaboration, and cooperation among relevant stakeholders in emergency management in the country.
Taking a look at the level of devastation being experienced in October last year, he said that year was overwhelmed by flood disaster across the country.
2012, the water never enter inside. But you go there now, it does begin to reach here. All my rooms here, I heard you do.
No single land, if not this place now, as you can see. Crop destroyed, want millions of naira. One cannot actually quantify how much.
And we also use this medium to call on the state, local government, and the federal to come to our aid, because every crops in this community has been carried away by flood.
The whole community need the federal government to assist us, both state and federal. Because the way it is now, you see, many people have been displaced. You can see for yourself.
The government and state government to come and help us to see that this water that are coming us every year will not be happening again.
Experts are of the opinion that if this new approach of disaster risk reduction can be strengthened, the effects of the annual occurrence of flood devastation will be effectively minimized. In Abuja, Ilyasu Yakubu.
All right, that report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me introduce our guests. I'd like to welcome to this program once again Engineer Clement Nze, Director General, Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Fred. My pleasure to be here.
I also like to welcome Dr. Onimode Abdullahi Bandeli, Director of Planning, Research and Forecasting, NEMA. Thanks for being here. That's the National Emergency Management Authority. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, viewers, and thanks for having me.
Let me also welcome to this program Professor Mansour Bako Metazu, Director General, CEO of the Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks, Cyril, and good evening, viewers.
And we are joined tonight by Dr. Kito Ngarbu, Associate Professor of Medical Geology, is Director of Nasarawa State University UN Environment Program Ecosystem-Based Adaptation for Food Security Assembly, EBAFOSA, Center for Climate Change Actions, and Director Linkages and International Cooperation of the University. He's also a Fellow of the National Commission of UNESCO. He joins us from Poland via Zoom. Dr. Ngarbu, good to see you. All right. Okay. So, at some point in time, as usual, the program will be interactive. Means you can join in with the discussion in the studio here with suggestions, questions. But at that time, we'll remind you of the process and the procedure. For now, let's begin to look at the issues at stake tonight in combating flooding and all those challenges. In our introductory remarks, we referred to the warning that Cameroon was about releasing water, or had started releasing water from its Lagdo Dam. And by now, most Nigerians are familiar with what happens. So, Engineer Clementinze, let's start with you. What's the state of the flood outlook in this country since the last time you came here to talk about it?
Okay, thank you so much. Issue of release of water from dams is part and parcel of reservoir operations. And before any dam is completed, the construction, there are specific manual for that particular dam, which guides the operation of that particular dam. So the issue of releasing water from a dam is a normal thing. This year, to be precise, on the 14th of August, Cameroon opened their dam precisely 10 minutes past 10 a.m. in the morning. And the water discharge from the dam was about 200 cubic meters per second. And they continued in that order. Later, they reduced the amount and closed their gate on 20th of August. Now they were getting more inflow into the dam. And in order not to put at risk the hydropower component of the dam, multiple dam has several, services: flood control, hydropower, irrigation. So in order not to compromise the hydropower component, they had to close their gate on 20th of August. Then, as more inflows were coming in, sometime in October, early October, they opened the gate again, 500 meters per second, later up to 900, later 1,000, and lastly 200. That was about maybe around 7th of October. So the cause not being certain of when the rains will cease, that northern part of Cameroon that contributes inflow into the dam, they have to reduce to 200 cubic meters per second. So, as of today, water release from Cameroon has been reduced to quite gradually, drastically. But within our own catchment in Nigeria, we have several rivers that are quite active that aid flooding of Nigerian parts, especially Adamawa and Taraba. Like what that happened last in Adamawa, it was inflow. There was heavy rainfall in Gombe City, Gombe town. Now through Gongola River, a tributary of Benue, part of Adamawa State was flooded. So by and large, release of water from Cameroonian Dam has been, brought to a minimal level. So whatever release that was done is a normal procedure in operating a reservoir.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bandili. What's the outlook like? There's a lot of apprehension past the start of the rainy season. People remembering flooding and all those disasters. So,
Yeah, thank you very much. Like the DG NISA said, excuse me, when NIMED gave their prediction early in the year, the seasonal climate prediction and the annual flood outlook, NEMA had this scientific section with the stakeholders. We brought out the disaster management implication of these predictions, particularly flooding. When people hear flooding, we talk of mainly displacement and agri. It goes beyond that. It affects the economy, transportation, electricity supply, etc. These things were brought to the fore, and because these are important to us in the country, the agency quickly did some letters to state governors citing those places that are likely to be flooded, desensitization with radio jingle, television jingles, and equally charged our zonal offices to go to those local government areas and sensitize the people such that they will be aware of the impending flood should it arise. But like people say, thank God it did not come on time until we had the issue of Lagdo Dam. Don't forget, most time when we say flooding, it could be flash flood, heavy amount of rainfall with high quantity of water, then the runoff is heavy. But this, in 1 or 2 hours, you go to those communities, you don't see anything. Yes, people will make no, but most of the time when we talk about flooding in Nigeria, we are more concerned about river flooding. And the two major rivers are rivers Niger and Benue, which constantly was being monitored, like the DG NISA said. And on the 7th of October, we got this information that parts of Adamawa has been inundated with water. From the explanation from the DG NISA, we can see that in-country rainfall contributed much to what we saw in Adamawa rather than the release of water from Lagdo. Be that as it may, my agency needed to come out and tell people along the banks of River Benue, downstream, talking of Taraba, Benue, until it gets to the confluence in Lokoja. We've not had any serious report from the River Niger axis coming from Kebbi through Niger to Lokoja. However, with the in-country rain that has gathered along River Niger, by the time they meet in Lokoja, you should expect the water volume to increase. But I must say that this year we are happy that the state government have taken action, and what we saw in 2022 is not what we are seeing now. The communities have been alerted, high places have been provided, and movement have started in some of those downstream states. So that is where we are as at now.
all right. Thank you very much, Prof.
Yes,
What's the outlook like? Every time they see you, the first thing people think about is, well,
yeah.
is it going to start raining heavily, or are we going to have dry spells?
Yeah, actually, true to the forecast we've issued out as early as January this year, excuse me, we indicated that the season was not going to be as intensive as 2022 flood season, so which now gives just a summary of little above normal and some areas below normal rainfall season. And this is as a result of the climate modulators that we have seen happen in 3 phases within a single year, graduating from neutral to El Nino and earlier La Nina within part of this. So this has really moderated based on the forecast we have issued that we're not going to see a high intensity rainfall in terms of amount, magnitude, and extent, just like 2022. and 22, which was a triple La Nina, what we call triple La Nina event, that really enhances rainfall. So based on the forecast we have issued, we've really categorized the season into 3 layers: the onset, and then also the peak season, and then the cessation period. So for most parts of the country, we are seeing the cessation activities of the, the rainfall within the northern parts of the country, and that comes in high intensity with strong storms at times, and this really generates a lot of local runoff. We've been issuing what we call impact-based forecast based on what the rainfall will be in terms of volume, and then also the impacts and potential hazards, and also offer advisories. So all the high-intensity rain we've been seeing in the northeast, we've really captured it in our 3-day forecast, and we've relayed this to the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies for uptake. But generally speaking, if you experience a climate extreme, like we did in 2022, it creates what we call climate anxiety. So I guess we've got a spillover of the 2022 anxiety for both the citizens and even relevant MDAs. But I don't think we are expecting such high magnitude of rain that will be having much impact like we've seen in 2022. But generally speaking, there must be pockets of areas because soil moisture in North Central is very high, and also the whole waters now goes to the receiving end, that's the Niger Delta areas. So, and definitely there must be accumulations also. And for cities within North Central and the inland cities of the south, they will be having high intensity rain. You remember Abuja here, we got 3 very intensive rain in the last 24 hours. And this could trigger flash flood, especially in areas around floodplains or areas that have blocked drainages. So far so good. The forecast played very well, more than 99% precision, and we are happy with the excellent coordination we are having among the relevant enabling MDAs, and of course also the presidential committee that is working now on mitigating the impacts of floods in the country.
Okay, thank you so much, and mercifully it hasn't been as bad as it was in 2022, but as they say, it's not a time to be complacent.
Yes,
I think that.
Yes, of course.
Well, let's go over to Poland now and talk to Dr. Kito Ngarbu. Well, how much of climate change is responsible for these extreme conditions that we have seen, we continue to see in some parts, and we might see?
Thank you very much. The fingerprint or the climate change signature continues to be visible in the flood events across the globe. It is either tied to melting of icebergs in the polar region, or it is tied to increased precipitation. Of course, the popular form for us back home in the tropical climate excludes things like snow and snowfall, which is a very strong form of precipitation in the area where I'm located presently. So climate change and its variables, such as ice melting, leading to sea level rise, increased precipitation, because suddenly temperatures have increased globally, and we can tie certain forms of precipitation or rainfall to increased temperatures, like the orographic rainfall, the frontal rainfall. We will continue to count the input of climate change on the flood and flood occurrences globally, and especially Nigeria, which is where we are concerned with, and the current geography we're discussing. So, and of course, again, desertification loss of forage has led to increased erosion and compounding the issues. Climate change factors coupled with poor infrastructure and legislation, again, have not helped us in the coping with flash floods, as little as they are. I'm not referring to the Labdo Dam from Cameroon or even increased rainfall, but mere inability to clear our drainage pathways, our gutters, non-deployment of adequate hydraulic engineering knowledge to the construction of water channels, and even lack of flood-resilient roads and buildings continue to make climate change factors take a cheap toll on the communities from the hinterland down to the creeks in Nigeria. So in a nutshell, I'm saying that climate change is directly, not indirectly, responsible for what we have seen. And I've just mentioned two factors. Drought is one indirect consequence, but ice melting resulting in increase in seawater levels and increased precipitation resulting in more rainstorms or storm water activities are responsible for flood activities in Nigeria.
Well, good enough. We're spared of the melting of ice, which would swell the rivers. That, we're spared of that. But there are still other issues which, as is mentioned here, and these are relatively local and ordinarily simple matters like proper drains and things like that, and blockages which lead to flash floods when there's an increase in rainfall. And many Nigerian cities still face these issues. So if you put that side by side with what happens when you release water from dams, Engineer Clement, as they say, it's a novel thing, so which presupposes that even right here, our own dams, especially those run hydroelectric power, also release water periodically, and this can exacerbate the situation.
See, on the River Niger axis in Nigeria, there are, I think within Nigerian catchment, we have two major dams there. And then we have a sound collaboration with the countries that are upstream Nigeria within the Niger Basin. For instance, we have Guinea, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Benin Republic, Niger, that are within the basin of River Niger. And all of them are situated upstream Nigeria. They do release water from their dams, but like I mentioned, it is a normal routine. But because of the collaboration we have within the Niger Basin Authority, which has headquarters in Niamey, adequate information is normally given to Nigeria. We monitor what happens upstream in Benin before Nigeria, in Niger upstream before Benin. So whenever the water level is getting to a certain threshold, we must be communicated to. And in that synergy between other agencies and the stakeholders, dam operators, Kainji and Jeba Dam, are always notified. And they must be given a very adequate lead time of the arrival of the flood into their dam so that they will be doing normal release of water to create volume or space for the heavy flood to enter into their reservoir, to avoid panic release, which often leads to flooding downstream. Now, that Dr. Kisto mentioned is a big challenge we have in Nigeria. The agencies at the federal level do a lot in terms of coming out earlier enough in the year to give warnings. But we expect the sub-nationals, the states and local government areas to do something, clean drainages. You see, After each flooding cycle, just like human beings go for medical checkup, after each flooding season, we expect that the states should embark on cleaning the drainages that are blocked. Go to other advanced countries, they do the same. You see them carrying out rubbish from the gutters to ensure that once the rain comes again, they will not be flooded. But oftentimes we don't do anything at all. That check-up, as it were, on our environment, audit on our environment. At times what we do is panic, or what we call fire brigade approach, when we're already within the rainy season, flooding season, month of August, September. And then you begin to do some work where you're not able to actually do the neat work. Constructing adequate drainage system. You see, gone are the days when we do things by the thumb rule, or rule of the thumb. Make it 2 feet wide, make it 2 feet deep. Where is the hierarchical data to do the design of the drainage? What you should be able to know amount of rainfall in a location. For instance, what is happening in Abuja here, Trademore Estate. Yes, sir, we saw some drainages. Are they properly sized? Are they properly located? Did you take into account the topography and the geology of that environment before you put your drains? So it's a whole amount of things that should be done scientifically to ensure that we are not caught, pans down each year. Those of us who do the prediction and make a release annually, do I say, you do get tired that you keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, and then people will be waiting for maybe relief whatever will be coming to them after the flood incident, and by then some of the damage has been done to people and the environment, which you cannot easily recover from.
Yes, well, as you said, we're looking up to Dr. Mandeli and Nema to bring relief all the time instead of taking proactive measures to avoid that situation. Now, you said in your earlier comments that happily some states took the advice and things are not as bad as they used to be, but you still have a situation where everyone looks up to federal authorities and federal agencies in times like this, and it's only on a few occasions that the sub-nationals take these matters as seriously. Have you seen a change in attitude here?
Yeah, thank you very much. Like I said, there has been an improvement. You see, we must understand the principle of this disaster response. This disaster happens in a locality. The local government chairman is expected to be the first responder because it happens in his local government. If it overwhelms him, he runs to the state, where we call the sub-national. But like you said, over the years, it has been a baby for the federal government to manage. But with our advocacy, under the leadership of Mustafa Habib Ahmed, most states are responding. They are beginning to set up local emergency management committees and get committed to the welfare of their people. I will not be in a position to start mentioning the state, but most of the states are keening into this disaster reduction effort. That's the proactive effort you are talking about. You don't just wait until it happens. And we are not just stopping there. We've taken this campaign to even secondary schools and other institutions to have disaster risk reduction clubs where you teach the students and the community at large what proactive measures they should take before this season comes. I must give it to some of these states. They are really coming up. But we still appeal to them to show more interest, to give more political will to the issue of disaster risk reduction, because you spend more when you react to these disasters than when you nip it in bud by campaigning and taking your campaign to the people that should need it. So in summary, I would say things are changing. The state government are living up to expectation, and I'm sure in few years to come, it will permeate all the states and will be better for it.
Well, Prof, you said we probably passed the peak period now and into the period of cessation, the rains. But as it seems to all of us here, the Harmattan would soon set in, but it's still raining.
Yes.
And this portends some, worry, especially for farmers and people who are growing food. What are the likely consequences of this? You wake up one morning and it does seem as if there's a haze and it's all gone, and the next thing you have very heavy downpour.
Thank you so much. Actually, if you look at our forecast for both onset of the season and cessation, there is a window of transition. And for most northern states, that is what we are experiencing. It's a transition period between the rainy season and the commencement of the dry season. Because some of these regulators, modulators of climate fluctuates based on response from other zones within the region, especially the subtropical high pressure zone in both north and southern parts of the globe. So these fluctuations now gives rise to combination of dust when you have incursion of the northeasterlies, and especially which we monitor the rise in high pressure over the Sahara Desert, which now lifts this dust, and we give such warnings. So availability of dust, and they still have remnants of moisture in the atmosphere, is a trigger. That is the kulikuli and magi that makes up the rainfall. Because without dust, raindrops needs pollen grains, sea salt, and other what we call particulate matter in the atmosphere to be able to form condensation for water droplet to be formed. So if you have dust, this will really enhance the process, and that is what we've been seeing. Influx of dust in the atmosphere with high humidity will trigger rainfall activities, especially this presence of solar radiation, because the sun is now migrating from the north to the south. So there's high intensity solar activities within the country. So, but for farmers, there's nothing to fear about, because it gives a certain sustenance of moisture in the farms, and also with this, the dust now provide what we call an umbrella effect, which now traps heat in a greenhouse effect. This trapped heat now helps guinea corn and other crops to now mature easily, and brings out the grains to get matured. So this is not an anomaly, it's a normal transition period activities. But for the southern state, they are now approaching their second peak, and that is where the little alarm and the fear is that most of the rivers are now draining into down the southern parts of the country, and the rains will now concentrate between the north central, as we have seen, around most of the cities in north central states, and also the inland cities. So there will be a sort of build-up of rainfall activities in such downstream states, and this will definitely lead to pockets of flash floods, with the combination of also riverine floods based on the inflows of these rivers. But based on what my brother from Poland mentioned, there is really element of climate change, to which NIMET has scientifically established local indicators of climate change. And I'll just mention a few of them. One of these indicators we have established in the country is change in rainfall pattern. The season now, length of the season shorten, and also intensity now increases. So we are experiencing now shortened lifespan of the rainy season with high intensity rainfall events. And this event definitely will now trigger a lot of runoff in terms of flash floods, and also riverine flow that now leads to some of these flood events. Another also indicator is increase in surface temperature, both day and nighttime temperatures. And with this increase, we have more convective activities. And convective rainfall is associated with these high-intensity rainstorms, strong gust winds, which now can affect infrastructure. So, and so many others. But the Flood Mitigation Committee is really working around the clock and bringing out many actions on adaptation, mitigations, and response, especially early warning.
All right, we'll talk in detail about that committee as we go on. But let me go back to Dr. Ngargu in Poland. And you are the director of Ebofosa, all right, of the university. So situate this for us, if you will, the impact on food security, what we're discussing tonight.
Great. There are crops that do not endure when rain is too much for them, and these are crops that are grown much later in the year, from the months of August and September, like our sesame seed and some variety of beans. So when you have too much rainfall, you can't grow such crops, and of course, food security is tampered with. When that happens, you have insufficient growth of such crops, which are very important for not only income generation, but even for nutritional balance. And that is the bimodal way that such increased precipitation or rainfall attributable to climate change will exert on the food security. Now, when certain months that you ought to have rainfall, like the earlier rainfall months of April, May, and June in some parts of the country, experience extreme drought, again, you are not able to crop early enough, and so you have to miss out certain crops. And so these are the two ways that increased precipitation, increased drought, and certain flood activities can take a toll on food security. And you can imagine a floodplain that grows vegetables, or maybe your rice taken over by flood waters. You can't go there. You can't risk your life you can't even till the soil or the ground. So invariably, these are the kinds of impact that climate change induce changes in rainfall pattern, in weather pattern, take on food security.
All right, thank you. We have some more reports in addition to the discussion in the studio. We'll take one of them. I have a couple. Let's take the first one from Kogi.
Only those in their 70s and above can remember the first case of flooding in Lokoja. It happened in 1936, then took a long break before returning in 2012, exactly 76 years after the first strike. In 2022, it struck again, and the state is yet to recover from the losses.
So many people homeless, farmlands, and what have you. And so that of 2022 is what we are still battling with again as a state. And so, again, we were told that 2023 we will experience, even if not more than what we experienced last year, that it will at least be up to.
Some of the victims of previous flooding in the state are holding their breath as warnings of another disaster gets louder.
Last year, around this time already, water has gone beyond this place. But I think this year is a bit delay. The flood is a bit delayed. But nevertheless, already there are some people in these houses of estates that already they've moved out already because the water is already in their apartment. All of them left already.
I and my family now, in fact, we suffered. We even lost some of our property before we can be able to rescue ourselves up to the high place.
So at the moment, how are you surviving?
In fact, now I'm having my personal house now. When the water has come in, now I'm renting. I don't have money to even raise it up again, so I'm renting somewhere else now at the up.
The state government said it is ready, but lasting solutions require the collaborative efforts of government at all levels.
Again, we have emergency, we call them emergency response and evacuation. We have them mapped out so that in case, and so it's part of our level of preparedness. Then we have desilting of drainages,
Prepared. If it's coming out, we'll take our belongings and run away. Just like how we did last year.
Water level continues to increase, and like previous years, no one knows the day or time it would reach a catastrophic level. In Lokoja, Jonathan Omajali.
All right, next report comes from Bayelsa.
Death, displacement, damage on critical public infrastructures, loss of private business premises, including farmlands and other means of livelihood, are among the harrowing experiences imposed on citizens and government by flood. A state like Bayelsa in particular, with such environmental peculiarities as predominantly riverine terrain and low topography, the challenge of flooding is endemic and perennial. In years of great floods, the impact is usually disastrous, as most communities and farmlands are totally overtaken by raging flood waters with recourse of fatality. Canoes at such times become the only means by which the people move about and congregate. But for the people's long experience and interaction with their predominantly aquatic environment, thereby developing survival skills on water over the years, the death tolls induced by flood disaster in communities in Bayelsa State would have been terribly alarming in times of great floods like those of 2012 and 2022. This is where environmental rights activists are concerned and calling for entrenchment of institutional approach to confronting the problem in a sustainable manner.
Those who have been assigned duty by the government should do their job. If your job is to ensure that the water channels, the gutters, the drains are cleared, have thoroughfare, do your work. And we also expect that such staff, such workers will have the backing of the authorities.
We are doing something in Emadike. I'm also involved in the project. And surprisingly, I'll say surprisingly because nobody will expect that. In 2022, Emadike was a home for a lot of people that their communities were flooded, and they served as refuge for people whose communities were flooded. Emadike used to be seriously flooded.
Certainly, Bayelsa is not alone as an area with a peculiar environment in the world map. How were other regions in the world with such peculiarities able to surmount this environmental problem? This is one question that demands a sincere and practical answer from experts and government.
So it is for the government engaging the right set of professionals, the right set of people that can advise and tell them what exactly is required to mitigate these floods.
From what we are seeing in other climes, where you see a very nice scenario, you see cities by the ocean. People will begin to see something like that in places like Bayelsa State in the Niger Delta.
Flood is a natural phenomenon and seasonal, which comes once a year. However, the level of its impact can be mitigated if the government on one hand demonstrate the will to enforce extant town planning laws and regulations, while citizens on the other hand improve on their level of environmental friendliness and desist from acts that are injurious to the health of the environment. In Yenagoa, Aya, Brazil.
All right, back here in the studio, I did say we'll talk more about this presidential committee to find ways to minimize flood impact. Prof, yes, give us an insight into the work of this committee and the strategies being employed in this case.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, this committee has the been chaired by the Vice President, Kashim Setima, and also broke down into a technical working group. And this group worked for the last 1 week and come up with policy and roadmap documents for implementation in the country. Basically is to flood being a natural phenomena, you cannot prevent it 100%, even in the most advanced economy in the world. But you could mitigate the impact of such natural phenomena and also leverage on coordination between different layers of government strata at the federal, state and local government levels also. And also bring a different approach to managing flood into becoming an integrated management system, whereby you also look at even the positive aspect of these flood waters, because after a few months, most of these waters will drain down to the sea, and you see people looking for water, looking for moisture to irrigate. So I wouldn't want to preempt the outcome of this committee. I'm sure the report will be presented in the next few days. And President is really concerned about the multiplier implication of this flood, especially coming out from 2022 that cost the country over $3.7 billion US, and that is very huge to the economy and also livelihood of Nigerians. So we're going to see more of effective coordination in the value chain, and all the relevant stakeholders are involved in this system of managing flood waters throughout there. For us in NIMED, we even look beyond the flood period, so that we can give some advisories even during the dry season to be able to utilize climatic information. I will give an example, like we can give what is called a specific water consumption of a place to avert drought and also the irrigation requirements. This is very necessary because in many irrigated fields, people think that the more water you apply, the more yield you get. But with having the knowledge of what to apply during dry conditions will also help most irrigated river basins system that we have in the country. Together with NISA, NEMA, NASDA, and also the Secretariat of the National Economic Council. So with this we have direct access also to conveying and relaying information to state governments, because based on Engineer Clement's concern, we're having that same concern. Most of the information do not get to the last mile as quickly as possible, especially this focus product is very perishable. So, but with this effective coordination that the fallout of this committee work will provide, I'm sure we're going to see more benefits coming and also less implication of floods in the country.
Okay, well, Dr. Bandiri, for years now, NEM has been involved in efforts to mitigate the impact of this flooding, providing succor, household items, food, and so many others. But again, you also provide advice, especially to communities that live on the coastal areas as well. And I do know that one of the most difficult things for people is change. A lot of people are attached to what they call their ancestral homes and lands. And there's sharp resistance. Some also talk about the loss of livelihood. So if you take away the fisherman from the banks and put him inland, it seems to be a big challenge. And again, others have also talked about moving away during the rainy season only to have those properties looted because no one looks out for them. How challenging is this for you?
Yeah, thank you very much. I want to start this discussion by going back to those two reports that were shown. It still goes back to where I started, that government at the subnational level need to do more. We at the national level, we give policies, but the policy implementers are the beneficiaries. You saw the report from one particular state where the drainages that are created is filled up with fields. So naturally water comes, it will find its way in our local palace. And for what we have been doing over the years, from our experience, flood itself is not a bad phenomenon, because when it comes with alluvial soil. This can be used for another cycle of planting and growing. From our experience, we've seen this, and we have had to go into emergency intervention. With this emergency intervention, NEMA provides high-yielding crop, early maturing crop, water-resistant crop, such that if you plant your rice and it's flooded, the variety we give the farmers now are those ones that can stand the pressure of the flood, that after 3-4 days, it comes up again and it can get to maturity. And we give them crops that within the first 3 months of the growing cycle, you can go into the field, plant, tender your crop, and harvest. Then you can move uphill, such that when the flood water comes, you can go back. In addition to that, we don't just look at the farmers who grow crops alone. We've gone into provision of livelihood materials. Women who use sewing machine, who use grinding machines have been supported. And to encourage farmer to take advantage of a second cycle of growth, water pumping machines are given to this farmer. So, like I said, it may look challenging to those who are outside, but for those of us who do this job, we are beginning to see a lot of improvement and quick return by the people who are affected, because they are beginning to follow our advice and beginning to do the needful, such that flood, instead of being a menace, is actually an advantage to those who live around the riverbank.
Okay, so, well, they now, from what you say, they're beginning to see wisdom in moving away and not being stuck.
In growing early maturing crop and moving up before getting stuck by flood water.
Right.
Yes.
What did I know what to say? What's it been like?
Well, like we've been, listening to comments from here and there, submissions. We're not expecting that it will be worse than what we have seen so far. Like Professor Matas mentioned, the rains, have begun to commence cessation for northern part of Nigeria. It's now from within the north central and then to the southern part of Nigeria. So we should still be on the watch out, especially in the southern part of Nigeria, where we still have some amount of rainfall and also inflow from transboundary rivers, which automatically ends up within the southern part of Nigeria, especially those contiguous states like Delta, Bayelsa, Rivers, even Anambra too, Kogi as well. So we should remain on the watch out to ensure that we are not taken unawares. So it's not yet out of it completely.
Yes, when you say that, for instance, well, again, mercifully, as we would say, the release of water from that dam has not caused any major issues. But that is not to say other contributory factors cannot lead to, even as the rains begin to cease.
Exactly, and that is why in the committee, which Professor Matas mentioned, which in a couple of days to come will be submitted to Mr. President. A lot of recommendations were made in that report to be able to counter all these fears we have every year, that there are so many rivers, inland rivers within Nigeria, that we need to put some structures, whether it's earth dam, whether it's seating, and so on and so forth. So these are part of some of the things that could be done or that should be done. Some of them are within the capacity of the state government and then federal as well, to ensure that we don't begin to run helter-skelter every year. Yes, flooding it has come to be. We are going to live with it. So we should play our own part to ensure that we are kept safe year-round. And then if there are losses, it will be minimal. You can imagine what happened in some other countries. If such should happen in Nigeria, it will be quite monumental in terms of losses, whether human and all kinds of things. So we should be on the watch out to do the needful, do whatever we're supposed to do as individuals and as states.
Well, Dr. Garbu, as a medical geologist and a climatologist, what are the things you would put across that should be taken more seriously in addressing this perennial cycle of warnings and failure to heed to warnings or disasters and asking for reliefs? Because it's just not, it's agreed that it's natural, it's not just going to stop on its own, but how the people deal with the situation when it arises.
Been eagerly awaiting this moment because the topic also wanted to look at prospects for mitigation and not just the challenges. I will urge government and all critical stakeholders in the environment sector to consider deployment or adaptation of new and improved technologies that will help in enhancing the early response infrastructure we have in Nigeria. For instance, while I was trying to check the weather situation where I am, I was given two options by the weather app. It asked me for accurate and then approximate data. We should tilt towards more precision-inclined technologies that will help us in proper flood mapping. And when it comes to flood mapping, and flood maps are a very critical tool in mitigating flood and its impact. I would like to ask that we should scale down the mapping level such that we have flood maps even at district level, not just one big single flood map for Nigeria, whose scale may not be truly a reflection of the floodplain catchment of a particular community. So this is what we must do. We must deploy knowledge of hydraulics towards construction of waterways, like DG NISA had echoed initially. You don't just call a contractor, go and dig a gutter, and then he does not know the amount of rainfall or precipitation for the particular region or community or town. We should strengthen legislation. I want to give you an example with what happened in America in the year 2019. I'm happy that the report of the committee is yet to reach Mr. President. But let me recommend that to allay the concerns raised by the Director of Planning and Research of NEMA, issue of, and then of course DG NIMET as well, stepping down of forecasting or forecasted information. We want it to reach states. We want them to use such information. We want it to reach local governments, and they should make use of such information. Let us borrow a leaf from what happened in 2019 in America. They called a conference of state legislatures. And the legislature, it was just on flood mitigation in America. And they came up with pieces of legislation that strengthen monitoring and strengthen enforcement, as well as a provision for basic requirement for weather forecast, weather or flood or weather-related disasters in every municipality. In Nigeria, we need that. Let's call councillors to a conference. Let's call state legislators to a conference. Let everything not end in the Senate, or the Green Chamber, the House of Reps in Abuja. With this, the 4 strategies that will always come to bear, that is protect, accommodate, retreat, or withdraw, if you like, and avoid, will be strengthened. We need to copy from countries where, for instance, disasters such as earthquakes are preponderant. In such countries, there are laws providing that houses to be built must be earthquake-proof. In Nigeria, before you should build or be given the right to build in a flood endemic area or region, we should provide for flood proofing, flood proof houses, either wet proofing or dry proofing. I think this is the submission I want to give at this point. And finally, to say that for coastal regions, creek management, we should ensure that the opening up of creek corridors, and we should check sediment load and creek bank erosion constantly. This is my take on the way forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, the phone lines will be open. It means you can join in the conversation in the studio. So stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, this segment is where we open the phone lines and you can get to join in the conversation in the studio. The numbers to call will be on your screens. You can call in with your question or comment on the issues at stake. Just so we remember the procedure, if you're calling in tonight and your call gets through, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. That's the way to avoid the echo, the hurlback. And we encourage you to go straight to the point, keep it short. And also, we ask that you not bother too much about the greetings. A simple hello would do. So you keep those calls coming through, and let's talk about how we can mitigate the impact of flooding going forward and to avoid all the disasters associated with flooding. Right, back here in the studio, Engineer Clement, we talked about adequate legislation, putting things in place as prerequisite for roads, construction, buildings, and all that, to make sure that they meet prescribed standards. But people would tell you easily that, yes, there's legislation. What's missing is enforcement. How good have we performed in this area?
Exactly, that is the problem. We have several legislation that guide what we do on our environment at the state level, at the federal level. But most of the time, to enforce those laws is a problem. Now, for those of us who do the prediction and the issue warnings and tell you what needs to be done, unfortunately, it remains at the advisory level. We are only giving you advice, which you are not bound to take. But at the state levels, they have various instruments by way of legislation that could be deployed to ensure that the environment is safe. For instance, every state, I believe, has a state or town planning authorities which have the mandate to regulate what happens in the environment. Here in Abuja, we have a development control department and other departments in the FCT that do regulation. We can see what is happening here in Abuja, such as being demolished, that are within the floodplains. So we want such a thing to be replicated at the state levels, where you also have state Minister of Environment, Minister of Water Resources, that have the powers, entrusted in them to do the needful. But most of the time, we don't do the enforcement. So I don't know what else we are going to do to strengthen the enforcement aspect of the law that have been made. It should be blind as it is seen in if you go to the various law courts, premises of our judiciary, see, the person doesn't know who you are. You want to implement the law, let it be so. Not sparing some people and maybe punishing other people that are powerless, so to say. The law should provide to protect them. Here in Abuja, I'm sure, other close to 200 houses, structures were removed from within the floodplain to ensure that we don't experience flooding in some locations or people losing their lives. I think so far within the FCT, Bailey, other water people are the more estates. And maybe one other place also, maybe in Kobo. So we want such state government to enforce their laws with regard to the environment to ensure that we are safe in our environment.
Dr. Bandili.
Yeah, like I said, at the national level, there are institutions in place that are doing excellently well. But Nigeria is a federating system. We can only appeal to the state government.
Well, I was just wondering about that, how it makes you feel when you have to provide succor, when things get so bad, you're called upon to respond, and you do, yet you give advice, and you daily see this advice you give is not taken. And when it happens, you have to come back and provide succor.
Before, those advices were not taken seriously. But like I said, we are beginning to see improvement. Years before now, you hear them telling you we are stockpiled, we are waiting for this to happen. But now we are saying, state government, reduce the risk so that what we send will be minimal. We are beginning to achieve that. But that is not to say we will not still tell the subnational governments to do more enforcement. NEMA, NISA, NIMET, even Minister of Environment will not go to my state to enforce town planning rules. We will not go there to do waste management business. But rather, the state government should please have political will to deal with this situation, so that when the people know what to do and they do the right thing, the effect of flooding will be drastically minimized. So it's still left for the subnational government to do more.
Well, we'll put the same thing to Professor Matazu here about what is seen as a recurring decimal. Earlier on, Engineer Clemens, they said, well, sometimes it's like you just get tired of it and you repeat yourself all the time.
Yes, actually, if you look at historically regarding weather, using the ancient civilization, we've seen for more than 5,000 years ago in Egypt, they were using position of stars to make forecast. And for us, as an agency that has the mandate to provide weather information, so first of all is to simplify it so that people understand what you say, and then also based on the advisories. And so over the years, we've graduated to 3 layers. One layer is rudimental forecast that we've been providing in the last few decades. And this rudimental forecast now created a visibility scenario for us. We became very visible, and information, people are beginning to ask, what are they doing? What are they doing beyond the 9 o'clock forecast we provide on NTA network? So people now understand that forecast information could benefit agriculture, could benefit health, environment, even comfort, and other sectors of the economy all. So this has now given us the last visibility layer, which we now call relevance. So becoming very relevant, meaning that simple uptake of such information could now impact positively to individual citizens of this country. I will give an example in agriculture. If you use our forecast for onset rainfall of onset, cessation, length of season, total rainfall amount, at least a farmer will get an idea of the type of variety to plant for that year. That simple choice of relevant appropriate variety will guarantee about 30-35% increase in yield and more than 90% decrease in the extreme risks of extreme weather events. And for early warning, I will give another example. If you heed to an early warning of an imminent climate-induced disaster like flood, you're bound to have a reduction in the casualty level by more than 30-35%. So come to now, how do we now access these citizens? We see all Nigerians, over 220 million, as our clients. We now leverage on technology. People have access to phones easily and is the dearest friends to all of us. So we now came up with an app that you could download, now Met Weather app. You could have information from all the 774 local governments. The app will pick your location and gives you 3-day forecast of that area. And you could scroll any city, over 500 cities, to also see forecast. You could also check any local government in a state, and it gives you average weather condition for planning, especially in agriculture. We also have a section there on farmers, what we call crop calendar. So this crop calendar, based on experience, it really helps farmers in planning their farming activities and thereby guarantee improvement in yield. We have other sectors in marine, we have also on health, and also temperature forecast. So as we can see, we also got our bill repealed last August 2022. So giving us more authority to now make all the sectors do uptake weather information in planning their activities. But we need to really collaborate more, especially with the state government. So we are happy with the coming of the National Economic Council, and we've been invited severally to talk to the subnationals. And they're beginning to see the beauty of this. We've done this downscaling using different projects under Federal Ministry of Agriculture, whereby we conduct roving workshops at the community level with our experts, with extension officers and climate change agents. So this really helps. But what we're saying is for state government to own this process, and because they all serve as the entry point to all what we do. We've done this together with NEMA and NISA in Akwa Ibom State some months ago. And whereby we gave out our forecast, and NISA gave all out their flood risk maps for the states, and it has really helped the states. So we want to see replication of this. The moment people see the benefit of utilization of this information. So definitely, even without very strong enforcement, especially for weather information, people will really buy into this, and also we're going to see positive response on this.
Okay, let's try and get in our first call tonight from Buba, who's calling in from Kaduna. Hello, Buba. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Good evening, sir. Good evening, Prof. and so on.
Good evening.
Now, I have a question to ask. Sir, when are we going to make use of flood like in other countries like Egypt, where the Nile do normally flow and is an advantage to irrigation farming. When are we going to plan to make use of flood to the extent that we can capitalize on the advantages of flood? Thank you. My name is Buba Umariaza from Kaduna.
All right. Thank you, Buba.
Okay. But that's a very nice question. And those of us who have been seeing the amount of fresh water that Nigeria loses annually, it is very painful. A number of years I've been involved in negotiating on the part of Nigeria, among other countries within the Niger Basin. There are 9 countries in the basin that are brought together by rivers Niger and Benue. At a point in time, we were negotiating because we are downstream. What is the percentage you can take, you should be allowed to take, so that the person downstream is not shortchanged? So Nigeria, we are saying 15%. In other words, a Guinea Conakry, don't take more than 50% of the water over Niger coming from your country. It will come to Mali. Mali don't take more than 15%. Niger, the same thing, Benin. So Nigeria will have its own. But during negotiation, when to other countries, insist that it has to be not less than 25%. What should be taken, what we call a threshold. The question that was put to Nigeria, which we couldn't answer, is this. You lose close to 200 billion cubic meters of fresh water annually to the Atlantic. It passes through your territory, from River Benue, from River Niger. They will all come. You have a lot of it from within Nigeria. More water comes from within Nigeria than what comes from outside. And you are allowed to pass through, dissipate into the ocean every year. So we will take as much as we want to take. Instead of taking 15% we are advocating for, we're taking 25%. Now, on our own part, we have been talking to the state governors. Find a way to make use of this water. We talked about what we call detention basins. Detention basins are constructed within the river banks, where properly designed, it will have a gate. You will channel it some kilometers to a large expanse of land, do a proper construction, properly lined, to avoid infiltration necessarily. So that when the flood water is passing through the territory, at a certain threshold, sort of causing flood, it will enter into that detention basin. You can have a number or a battery of it in each state in Nigeria that are contiguous to rivers Niger and Benue. That way you reduce what is within the main trunk of River Niger or River Benue. That water will be utilized for year-round irrigated agriculture. Like what we have in this, what we call Jabi Lake. It was put there. It didn't come there naturally. It didn't come there on its own. It was put there. It's a kind of basin. And once you do it, life and livelihood often thrives around where you have water. Okay. Like if you go to Jabi, maybe even at this point in time, there's activity going on there. They put shop right around that area. The environment is way cooled. Borehole yield within Jabi, within Life Camp, Guarempa, has increased because of infiltration to enhance the water you have in that area. So we've been advocating for this. Reduce the losses by having detention bases. Have it in Niger, in Kebbi states, in Taraba, in Adamawa, many of them, Kogi.
And then you utilize it. Okay. Let's take this other call from King, I believe. King from Plateau.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am interested in this your topic of overflowing of water in Nigeria. In fact, water is becoming a problem which is supposed to be a servant and is becoming a problem not only in Nigeria but all over the world. I want to go straight to the point, just as you have rightly said. I greet you all. What I want to say is that flood is as long as created when you understand the story of Noah. That was a natural one. But today, I think our constructive nature along waterways is responsible for flood of today. You find out that people deliberately construct along waterways, and water is a force that if you block its way, it will naturally force its way through any construction that has been made on it. We have dams along the way, we have constructions along the way. People are trying to divert natural waterways. Our habits are limited to water flow. Therefore, if we want to make any construction, we must make adequate provision for alternative routes for the water to flow. If not, it will cause damage both to lives and property. I want to call on government to establish any warning system, not only at the federal level or state level, but at the local government level and possibly at the ward levels. Because this warning system at the ward level are the primary source of those disasters will help. So much if we have them at the local government headquarters and then ward headquarters. It will help eliminate this kind of problem. Let us be preventive in our attitudes than of the primitive side we are seeing today. In fact, I want to call on people who construct in flood-prone areas to avoid it. No matter what, our lives are more precious. People should try to avoid such waterways. And let us as human beings practice kind of habits that are environmental friendly so that we will not be having these floods and then drought. May God help us. Water is really a good servant, but a very bad master. Let us avoid it. Good night.
Yeah. Thank you very much, King. Well, let me go over to Dr. Ngargu in Poland. What you make of first caller who posed the rhetorical question: when are we going to start using flood waters for beneficial reasons, and when can't we harvest this flood waters and put it into good use for agriculture? And you had Engineer Clement talk about collaborations in the past and meetings and understandings, which, well, we'll look at that later on and how far it goes. But just before you respond, let's see if we can take this call in from Kogi. Hello? Nuruddin, who's calling in from Kogi, I believe. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. I'm calling you from Nedi Barek, Kogi State.
Right, go ahead.
Okay, I'm welcome all the guests. As I observe some places in Kogi State, the flood is just water is motivating. It's just like poverty is being triggered the flood in the area, in some areas, as I observe. So please, if possible, let government official knows that there is entitlement they're supposed to give the community so that they will do what kinds of building they're supposed to offer for that area.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you very much. We'll note that, and our guests here will comment on what you've just said, relation of poverty to these areas that are prone to such disasters, and asking for, government to respond in a way that they'll now heed the advice on how to keep their communities from the dangers of flooding. But so let's go to Dr. Ngarbu. Now you may respond to the issues we raised earlier for that call.
Yeah, let me bring up some salient benefits of putting to use flood waters from the intellectual and technical perspective. They will help us in complex hydrologic and hydraulic modeling and in watershed planning. Now, these are things for the boardroom. But in terms of flood mitigation design, you can't take away channel improvements and detention facilities, like have been mentioned by DG NISA. You ask when should the time be that we put flood waters to beneficial use. The time is now where there is growing loss of livelihoods, especially relating to land use activities that thrive on the river basins, streams and rivers. For instance, the time is now when there's growing unemployment. In fact, one big benefit of utilization of flood waters will be the resuscitation of Lake Chad. I pray that the committee, presidential committee, will add this as a feature of the report. The excess water coming from Labdo Dam into River Benue can be rechanneled. Yes, it's a complex hydraulic engineering project, but compared to annual losses, it is worth it. So much of the Lake Chad has shrunk, and then we have so much water, like DG NISA said, lost to the Atlantic. So the time is now so that more fishing communities can be grown or established through the channeling of water. There are many rivers and streams that have dried up. You no longer see water. If you see water in there, maybe 2-3 months, the water is gone. You can rechannel some of the flood waters to recharge, if you like, to resuscitate some of our disappearing streams and rivers. And then fishing will come up, inland waterway activities will spring up, and irrigation agriculture will come up, etc., etc. So straight to the point, the time is now, and we should stop wasting the flood waters. They are also a national asset if looked at deeply, but if treated on the surface, they are just a disaster. So at least I've tried to balance the two sides of the coin, the negative and the positive. Thank you.
Okay, well, the second caller, all right. A caller from Abuja on the line, Hadi, I guess. Go ahead.
Al-Hadi Shehu Suleiman.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, go on, please. Let's hear you.
My name is Al-Hadi Shehu Suleiman.
Go ahead.
I'm just calling. I'm just calling that we don't have to look at other countries. We should try and tackle our own problems in our country. When we talk of flood, the minister of Abuja is there, and we have a lot of experts. When you are allocating land to someone in Abuja, right? We should look for a flood challenges areas. But the problem in Nigeria, we allocate land anyhow, both the state government and the federal government. So at the end of the day, if there is a flood, we can't blame anyone. We blame the people that allocate land, especially the Minister of FCT, the Director of Land, the town planners, and the rest. We should tackle our problem. We shouldn't look at other countries' issues. We should tackle our problem ourselves, for God's sake.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay? Well, again, a call for enforcement of regulations, and he says sometimes it's officials who breach those regulations by granting permits where they shouldn't grant permits. And so they are also culpable, which takes us back to the question of enforcement. But again, one of the callers, I believe it was the second, Nuruddin from Kogi, who drew your attention to the poverty level in those communities. What do you make of that, Dr. Bandeli?
Yeah, poverty, as those are indicators. I'm sure what Nuruddin is trying to do is to link resettlement with the poverty level of these people that inhabit the banks. The community is talking about happens to be my community.
Oh.
Yes. That is around Banda towards Karara. Yes, you want these people to live, you want them to move upland. But what he's saying is government need to assist these people because they don't have the financial muscle to build new homes. You understand? That is where he's linking poverty with flood prevention. Yes, these people are close to floodplain. Those are ancestral homes that they made themselves. Now you want them to move because the water level, the volume of water that is coming now is beyond what they used to experience when they started living there. But to make them move, what should government do to assist them? That is where he's bringing in poverty into the issue of flooding. So I think if we look at it again, we'll still go back to the subnational government because you need to, the land they are going to reallocate belongs to the state government. The town planning authority is going to ensure that this place is fit for human habitation. Then you need to bring in certain things before you now come to federal government and say, please, I want to do ABC. I have AB, but please assist me with C, so that the cycle can be shunted for these people to go back to their normal life. I think that's what the young man is talking about.
All right. Our next caller is Amos from Abuja. Amos, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, yeah. Yeah, I'm there.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, speaking with the short, at least when senators are nominating the...
Yes, Amos.
The Minister of Water Resources.
Okay.
You might promise to channel some dams so that this fraud will stop in this country. So they should go ahead and put money for the Minister of Water Resources so that you channel the dam, so that the fraud will get issue for this country.
All right. They should just put money into the Ministry of Water Resources. Okay.
Yeah, they might promise. That is when they're nominating. These are the things they promise.
All right.
So that when they give him the water Minister of Water Resources, he will channel some dams.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a suggestion.
I think it's part of the committee's report. The current committee is working, set up by Mr. President, chaired by the Vice President. So we are working as part of it.
Okay.
We will need to put dams, whether the tributes of some rivers, to reduce the amount that is entering to the main trunk of rivers, Niger and Benue. And also, action be taken on this Industrial House Dam that has been a recurring decimal. It's part of it.
Sir, sorry, let me just cut in here. I wouldn't know the detail of that committee report. But from what Prof and engineers have talked about, we have not really positioned the private sector in flood mitigation. You can't just leave everything to government. Like I said, if we're looking at the implication of flooding on the economy, people who are in the private sector sometimes are worse hit. When we had flood last year and trucks have to stay at the Muritala Bridge for weeks, we lost livestock, we lost perishable items like tomato, pepper, big lorries carrying cement and other things were stocked. what would be the place of this private sector when we're talking about flood mitigation? I think we need to look at that critically. It's very important. Do they need to contribute to a special fund to do some of these things? Do they need to come up? They should come up and tell us what they can do to assist federal government too. It shouldn't be about government alone. That is my thinking.
Yeah, I think an information here, Cyril.
Yes, Prof.
Actually, we don't want to preempt the outcome of this, but this has been deliberated at the committee level. There's a section on even financing the intervention. This is based on immediate needs, then short-term based, and also first even to categorize the floods based on intensity, magnitude, and extent of damage to lives and livelihoods. Even this issue of insurance and also PPP. So it's an all-encompassing report that the adoption and implementation of it will really yield positive impacts, especially regarding flood management. So we have actions based on immediate, being a natural phenomena. There must be immediate action, at least to stabilize victims, and then we have short-term, medium-term, and long-term, because certain intervention requires long-term. You need budget, you need time to implement some of this infrastructure like dams, barrages, and sort of physical infrastructure. So I think it's going to be a good one, and we're really working very hard to make sure we give the best to the country.
All right. Soon, as we've heard, the rains will recede, they will come to a stop, the rains will cease, and it will be Harmattan, the dry season, and for many people, they'll bet that the momentum that we've seen in addressing this challenge would wane. How do we ensure it doesn't?
For the general public?
Yes. To keep it alive, to keep this on the front burner, because just once the threat seems to have gone, and then you lapse back into.
I'm not a military person, but I think it's better to plan for war during the time of peace.
Right.
You plan better. You plan better when you have no stress, as it were. So if we put it at the back of our mind that this could happen, so it is better that once the rains is ceased, we can see better what has happened in the environment. You know, after each flooding season, anywhere you go within the communities, you will see the handwriting, the signatures of the flood to tell you this is what has happened. If there are bridges, you can see it on the bridge piers, or what we call pillar or columns. You see on the tree trunks, you see the flood marks. So during the dry season, people should go to work to address the flood issues, building of drainages, removal of structures that have been implicated, that are within the flood plain. Somebody who spoke, people are locating houses that are put within the flood plains. You can see that those structures are within the flood plain by the flood marks you see on the bodies of those places. So clean the drainages during the dry season, constructing new drainages, removal of structures that are within the flood plains. These are things that you can conveniently do during the dry season, so that when the rains set in, you will not be caught, pants down with managing flood issues. You have to prepare ahead of time during the dry season, not to wait until the rains come.
Well, let's hear from NEMA what its plans are, especially as NEMA would have to respond to not just flooding, but so many other forms of disasters where
thank you very
stretch out
much.
thin.
Let me quickly state here that disaster itself has a continuum. You live in one stage, you're going into the other. Now we have done preparedness, which you cannot really separate from mitigation. We got into response. We are going to do recovery, reconstruction. From this reconstruction, you are going to put some mitigation in place. So our own idea is to ensure that the cycle is respected and is adhered to. Nobody should go to sleep. Whatever window we have, we should be able to come to the table and say, what are the lessons learned? What can we do better than what we did last year? And we will still want to continue our advocacy, increase mass education, because like Prof said, if you do all the prediction, NISA does all the prediction, and it ends up on the local government chairman's table, it's not helping us. How do we take these messages to those communities that was predicted was going to be affected? They didn't take action. What do we do next? When they now do the next prediction, what other means do we use to get to those communities so that they can be properly informed and everybody will understand the language that the two predicting organizations are speaking? If we continuously do this from time to time, I believe Nigeria and Nigerians will be better for it.
Well, in response to disasters, I'm just asking this as an addendum, in response to disasters and disaster management, how would you rate NEMA today in terms of use of adequate technology, use of modern methods of search and rescue? What is the status of NEMA today?
Let me correct this impression. When people hear NEMA, they see us as a response agency. NEMA is not a response agency, but a coordinating agency that uses the advantage of having stakeholders that are professional in their own calling. NIMET is here. NEMA will not do seasonal climate prediction.
Certainly.
NISA is here. We will not give annual flood outlook. But what can NEMA bring out from this prediction? That is our job. And when we bring it out, who are these relevant stakeholders that we have taken this message to? It's going to affect health. How much of this information have we passed on to the stakeholders that are in that sector? It's going to affect agriculture. Who are you discussing with at the agricultural sector? So in our response, these things are strategically distributed to sectoral leads. And these sectoral leads form part of our stakeholder. That's why when we say the Emergency Coordination Forum, we bring out the sector lead and we try to, from time to time, ask ourselves questions. We gave you this task in January. Where are you in March? The rain is going to come in April. What have you done? So, as NEMA does this emergency coordination at the federal level with the stakeholder to ensure that the right things are done, we expect the State Emergency Management Agency to have a replica of what we are doing so that every stakeholder at the subnational level are doing exactly what we're doing. Once we have this in place, I'm sure we'll do better. And coming to your question, I will tell you, so far so well, NEMA is not losing out in its fight against disaster. Thank you.
Okay, well, back to DG of NIMET.
Yeah, thank you. For us, this is just a sub-season, and since we monitor the atmosphere in all ramifications and per minute per second, we are already seeing signal of dry season in the north, and this also comes with its own risk of dryness and also exposure to dust particles that could have health implications. So we're already working on that. So for 2024 seasonal climate prediction, we have already started working on running the model by October to some parts of November, while monitoring the cessation period and evaluating the performance of the forecast. So that as early as January, first or second week, our Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development will talk to Nigerians and release the forecast. By doing this in January, we will be able to prepare and give lead time, about 4 to 6 month lead time for state government to really own this. And we're very much interested in working with state government. All of us, NISA, NEMA, and NIMET, from January we could organize state-level forecast. And this state-level forecast will be a downscale of the general seasonal climate prediction we do, looking at the largest scale, local government and district level, and align the year's forecast to socioeconomic activities and provide advisories. As areas of high risk, we map them and also do a lot of roving workshop at the state level. We have officers that could go to southern state between January to March, and also move to northern state between March to May, June. And by that, we'll have covered the whole of the country. And with this, you have people at the local last mile community having access to all this information. But we cannot get this without the total buy-in by the state governors. We're still appealing, and I'm sure the chairman of the NEC, vice president, is really very passionate about this, and we could achieve a better approach to this. One factor also that I would want to mention here is we do a lot of tree felling activities. Deforestation in this country is quite alarming. I hate to mention it, but if you look at the satellite imageries, extreme northern Nigeria has less tree species than extreme southern Niger Republic, and it shouldn't be. It's a reverse dynamics of the land use. So, and we should really be very mindful about deforestation. During this dry season that is coming, because of just 1-2 grass cutter, people could set a 10-kilometer square forest on fire, and all the trees will go. And
I was going to come to
Engineer
that.
Clement will mention that absence of tree cover will really induce more runoff, more sediments,
erosion,
more siltation, then more flood. So we're losing more than 380 to 400,000 hectares of forest annually, and it's very, very alarming. We need to do a lot about the afforestation project. There are many ecosystem mechanisms in the report that we have suggested. Like, I will give an example. Using gao tree, Feather Bay albida, will have a dual phenology, whereby during dry season it flourishes and attracts atmospheric nitrogen. And then during dry season, it now transfers this atmospheric nitrogen into the soil. And by that, you have tree cover, you have livestock feed, and then you also have environmental conservation approach to this. And with this, it naturally fertilizes the land, and you wouldn't need much fertilizer to be able to farm. So we're very pleading, especially at the sub-national level, loss of trees. In my state, Katsina State, in the 1960s, we used to have over 60 forest reserves. And now we only have one. And most of the forests in northern Nigeria now are dry woodland. So we need to really take this issue very serious, because it has multiplier implication on the ecosystem.
Well, just as you mentioned, so remember growing up, we saw these forest reserves, especially in the north, with the signposts all along them, Gandundaj.
Yes,
okay, right. Dr. Ngarbo, I want you to take it up from there. How you balance the needs of man as humans now, and human activities as against the environment, and putting in place environment-friendly activities. We just heard now the loss of forests, where people are compelled to, or well, not compelled, people who want to set a whole place ablaze just for the purpose of what we call bushmeat.
It's pathetic. One way to overcome this growing culture of the reckless handling of our environment in the name of hunting is to step up advocacy from the lowest levels. There should be environment clubs from primary school to secondary school, levels of education, and visible activities of such clubs should be seen to be carried out even at the level of tertiary education, just like To encourage patriotism, today Nigeria is promoting civic education. We need to promote the environment and the environmental health and friendliness. So this is what I will suggest as a way of striking the balance between the utilization of natural resources and the protection, or if you like, stewardship of the environment. I'm also, from my medical geology background, I am happy that DG NIMET just mentioned that they are about to look at health impact of the Saharan dust. Actually, Nigeria is ripe for a medical geochemistry database of the Saharan dust because it comes with a lot of attendant health issues, taking a toll on the human capital development and even economic well-being of the country. I would like to say that now that it is dry period, this is the time to, if you like, begin to cure the environment. Haven't been injured or haven't sustained an injury, you will nurse the injury. Like DG NIMET had said, when there is cessation in the impact of flooding and flood risk factors, that is the period of retreating. A strategist will retreat at that moment and look carefully at flood forecast information, flood model information, and plan for the future. So I'm suggesting proactive measures which should concentrate on floodplains and stream restoration. Floodplains and streams can mitigate flooding. So however they became obstructed, it is time to match words with action from our government. We have the law, we have law enforcement. So why are we not taking action? This is my take on striking the balance, taming the environment, if you like, upgrading the environment for our common good.
All right. Okay, and just on a personal note, I see that you're keeping warm there. What's the temperature there in Poland where you are?
It's 1 degree, and in 2 hours' time, it will be -2 where I am.
Oh dear. Well, so just
so
stay
I'm in the room.
Yeah, I can see.
The heater is on the highest level, number 5, but I still need a jacket.
All right, so you stay warm. And thank you very much, Dr. Songagu, Associate Professor of Medical Geology and Director of Nasarawa State University UN Environment Program, Ecosystem-Based Adaptation for Food Security Assembly. Thanks for joining in this conversation from Poland, and we appreciate you. And keep
Thank
safe.
you, sir. Thank you so much, distinguished panelists.
All right, thank you. And back here in the studio, time to say thank you to Engineer Clement, Director General, Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Thank you so much. It's always a delight for you to come and talk to us about it, and we pray you never get tired.
Thank you
to
so
say
much.
the things you need to say.
It's been an interesting night.
Right, thank you. And then Dr. Onimode Abdullahi Bandele, Director of Planning, Research and Forecasting of NEMA. Also interesting to have you join these conversations.
Thank you
so
for
much.
having me.
Right, thank you. Well, for Professor Mansour Bako Matazu, Director General CEO, Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, we also appreciate you all the time coming here to tell us,
with all pleasure.
Better weather than Ngargu has there in Poland.
Of course. Thanks, sir.
And today we are not doing anything near 1 degree.
Yes,
right.
but we need to be more weather-wise.
Okay, all right. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Good evening.
All right, and that's our program. We also thank you for being part of it. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Continue to stay safe.